She thought she could shatter my happiness on the most important day of my life. But what she didn't know was that secrets have a way of crawling into the light. And when the truth came out, it wasn't my wedding that was ruined. It was her entire reputation. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share for more powerful stories. The grand ballroom glistened with golden chandeliers, casting a warm glow over white roses and crystal table settings. The faint hum of violins filled the air, weaving together an atmosphere of love, anticipation, and nerves. I stood in front of the full-length mirror in the bridal suite, staring at myself in a gown I'd dreamed of since childhood. A vision in ivory lace, delicate embroidery wrapping around me like a story written in fabric. This was supposed to be my perfect day, but there was a storm brewing. Her name was Vanessa, my so-called best friend, the woman who had stood by my side for years, who helped me choose this very dress, who pretended to cry when my fiancé Daniel proposed. She was supposed to be my maid of honor, my sister in all but blood. But in the weeks leading up to the wedding, I'd started to notice cracks in her mask, little whispers, strange glances, texts she'd quickly hide when I entered the room. At first, I brushed it off as stress. Weddings have a way of straining even the closest friendships. But deep down, my gut screamed that something wasn't right. And on the morning of my wedding, my instincts proved me right. Just before the ceremony, my cousin Emma stormed into the room, her face pale, her hands shaking. "You need to see this," she whispered, shoving her phone into my hands. On the screen were screenshots messages between Vanessa and Daniel. At first glance, it looked like harmless banter. But then I saw it. Vanessa confessing feelings, suggesting that Daniel was making a mistake marrying me, and hinting at a secret between them. My knees buckled. My hands trembled so hard I almost dropped the phone. Emma caught me, her eyes blazing with fury. "She's planning something. She told someone she wants to stop this wedding." The violin music outside swelled, signaling guests were taking their seats. My heart pounded like a drum against my ribs. All my dreams, my future, were suddenly teetering on the edge of a cliff. I couldn't let Vanessa win. Not today. I steadied myself, took a deep breath, and whispered to Emma, "If she wants a war, I'll give her one." And that's when my perfect day turned into a battlefield. Ceremony began. Guests rose as the doors opened, their faces glowing with joy and admiration as I walked down the aisle. Every step felt heavy, but I forced a radiant smile, refusing to let anyone see the chaos ripping through me inside. Daniel stood at the altar, tall, handsome, nervous, his smile unsure as his eyes darted briefly toward Vanessa. She stood smugly in her maid of honor gown, holding my bouquet like a trophy. Her eyes met mine, a flicker of something mockery, victory, flashing before she plastered on a fake smile. The priest began the vows. The words blurred around me, my mind racing with the screenshots Emma had shown me. Was Daniel complicit? Had he fallen into Vanessa's trap? Or was this just her twisted obsession? Then, just as I was about to say, "I do," Vanessa struck. She cleared her throat loudly, interrupting the sacred moment. Gasps rippled through the audience. "I can't stay silent," she announced dramatically, her voice trembling just enough to seem sincere. "This marriage is a lie. Daniel has been unfaithful with me," the room erupted. Shocked whispers filled the air. My mother clutched her pearls. Daniel's parents looked like they'd been slapped. Daniel froze, his face pale as death. "That's not true," he shouted, but his voice cracked with panic, making him look guilty. Vanessa stepped forward, crocodile tears brimming in her eyes. I didn't want to say anything, but I can't let her marry a man who's been sneaking around behind her back. She deserves the truth. Every guest's eyes turned to me. The bride, the woman humiliated at her own altar. For a moment, I felt the world spinning, my throat closing up. But then clarity struck me. Vanessa wanted me to break down, to run, to call off the wedding in disgrace. But instead, I straightened my shoulders, lifted my chin, and calmly said, "Interesting, because I have a truth to share as well." A ripple of confusion spread through the crowd. Vanessa's smirk faltered. Daniel looked at me, wide-eyed, terrified of what I might reveal. And in that moment, standing in front of everyone, I made a silent vow. I wasn't just going to defend myself. I was going to destroy her. The ballroom went silent, every eye on me. Vanessa's face lit with anticipation, sure she had cornered me into a public breakdown. But instead, I steadied my voice and spoke with an icy calmness that cut sharper than any scream ever could. "You see," I began, locking eyes with Vanessa, "a true friend doesn't try to destroy someone's happiness on the most important day of their life. Unless, of course, that friend has something to hide." A murmur spread among the guests. My aunt leaned forward in her seat, whispering furiously to the person next to her. Cameras were already out, guests capturing every second of this chaos. Vanessa's smirk faltered. "What are you implying?" she asked, her voice trembling now. "I'm not implying," I replied smoothly. "I'm stating facts," I signaled to Emma, who stepped forward like a knight on command. She held up her phone for everyone to see. "Screenshots don't lie," Emma declared, her voice sharp with confidence. The crowd collectively gasped as Emma scrolled through. Vanessa's text projected onto the venue's screen. Yes, I had planned this. I had anticipated Vanessa's move, and instead of walking blindly into her trap, I laid one of my own. Text after text appeared, Vanessa confessing her feelings for Daniel, begging him to leave me, even scheming ways to sabotage the wedding. Daniel stepped forward, his voice finally steady. "I rejected her every time. I never betrayed my fiancée, Vanessa." "You're obsessed." Now it was Vanessa who looked cornered. She tried to laugh it off. "Photoshopped. This is all fake." But then another voice rang out. "My cousin Emma again, really? Because I took screenshots directly from your phone when you left it unlocked at the rehearsal dinner." The audience gasped louder. Guests leaned forward, hungry for more drama. My mother, who had been pale with shock minutes earlier, suddenly folded her arms and gave Vanessa a death glare sharp enough to slice glass. Vanessa's tears dried instantly. Her face turned crimson. "This is ridiculous," she shrieked. "She's lying. You're all lying." But it was too late. The seed of doubt had been planted in every guest's mind, and I wasn't finished yet. "Shall we continue?" I asked the priest, my voice calm, composed, and victorious. But Vanessa wasn't done. She lunged forward, grabbing the microphone from the altar. Her voice cracked as she screamed, "You don't know the truth. Daniel told me he was unhappy. He told me things about her, things she wouldn't want anyone here to know." Gasps spread again. For a moment, even I froze. The audacity, the cruelty. Daniel stepped forward, yanking the mic back. His voice thundered through the ballroom. "Enough, Vanessa. I never said those things. You're lying because you can't stand to see her happy. You're pathetic." The word pathetic echoed, burning through her like fire. Vanessa stumbled back, visibly shaken, but still desperate to cling to control. I walked closer to her, my heels clicking against the marble floor, every step echoing like a drumbeat of justice. When I stood face to face with her, I lowered my voice so only she could hear. "You wanted a show? Congratulations, Vanessa. You just gave everyone the performance of a lifetime. And when this is over, it's your reputation, not mine, that's destroyed." Her eyes widened. She knew I wasn't bluffing, because what she didn't know was that I had more screenshots of her talking trash about other brides. mocking friends behind their backs, even flirting with her boss's husband. Emma and I had compiled everything. So when I turned back to the audience and calmly said, if anyone would like to see more evidence of Vanessa's loyalty, just ask. I have plenty to share. The room erupted in murmurs again. Guests who once adored her were now glaring, whispering, pulling out their phones. One woman in the back shouted, I knew she wasn't trustworthy. Another added, she tried to steal my fiancé once too. And just like that, Vanessa's carefully curated image shattered like glass. Daniel slipped his arm around my waist, steadying me as if to say, we've won this battle together. The priest hesitated, unsure whether to continue or call off the ceremony, but I knew one thing. Vanessa wasn't walking out of this wedding as a friend, a maid of honor, or even a respected guest. She was walking out ruined, and we had only just begun. The silence that hung in the ballroom was deafening. Vanessa stood frozen, her mascara smudged, her hands trembling around the crumpled microphone. Every whisper in the crowd was like a dagger to her ego, but Vanessa was never the type to admit defeat. No, if she was going down, she would go down clawing and screaming. Suddenly, she straightened, plastered on a twisted smile, and shouted, You think I'm the villain? You're all blind. Do you know who you're marrying, Sophia? Daniel isn't the angel you think he is. He's lied to you too. A gasp rippled across the room. My heart skipped. For a split second, doubt crept into me. Could she? No, Daniel wouldn't. Daniel's jaw clenched. Vanessa, don't you dare. But she did. She pulled her phone out of her clutch and held it up like a weapon. I have messages. Proof he messaged me late at night, telling me he wasn't sure about you. That he doubted your future together. Should I show everyone? The crowd erupted again, hungry for the scandal. Heads swiveled between me, Daniel, and Vanessa like they were watching a play. I felt the heat rise to my cheeks, my stomach twisting. Daniel, I whispered, my voice trembling, but instead of panic, Daniel laughed. Actually laughed. He turned toward Vanessa, his voice dripping with mockery. You mean those fake screenshots you edited on some cheap app? The ones you emailed to yourself and then forgot to delete from your drafts folder? Her face turned pale. Emma, always ready, stepped forward and projected another set of screenshots. This time, it wasn't Vanessa's supposed proof. No, this was her search history, pulled directly from her own cloud backup. Right there on the big screen, the audience read aloud, how to fake iMessage screenshots, apps to edit conversations for free, how to make fake texts look real. Laughter erupted through the crowd like wildfire. People clutched their sides, pointing at Vanessa, shaking their heads. Her composure cracked completely. That's not this isn't. She stammered, but the more she spoke, the more ridiculous she sounded. Daniel looked at me, his hand squeezing mine. I told you. She's desperate. She'd make up anything to ruin us, and he was right. Vanessa was unraveling publicly, and the more she tried to save herself, the deeper she sank. Vanessa wasn't finished. Oh no, she couldn't stop not when her pride was burning hotter than the humiliation she was enduring. She screamed, You all think I'm the liar. Sophia isn't perfect either. Do you know how many people she stepped on to get here? She pretends to be innocent, but she's ruthless. But her rant broke off as she realized something terrifying. No one was listening anymore. Half the guests had turned away, muttering to each other, disgusted. A few were already walking out, shaking their heads at her drama. The cameras were still rolling, but now the narrative wasn't hers, it was mine. Emma whispered in my ear, She's done. One more push, and she'll never recover. I took a deep breath, stepped forward, and spoke, my voice calm, commanding, uncheckable. Vanessa, you've humiliated yourself enough. You tried to ruin my wedding, my happiness, and my reputation. But look around. Whose reputation is left in ashes now? The crowd erupted in applause. Actual applause. It wasn't just my victory, it was collective justice. Everyone who had ever been wronged by her was savoring this moment. Vanessa's face crumbled. Tears finally streamed down her cheeks, not the fake ones from earlier, but real ones. She looked small, broken, like a queen stripped of her crown. Daniel whispered to me, "Let security take her out." But I shook my head. No, I wanted her to walk out on her own, carrying the weight of her destruction. That would sting far more than being dragged. And so, in front of everyone, I delivered the final blow. "Vanessa, you're not my maid of honor anymore. You're not my friend. You're not even welcome here. Leave." The ballroom fell silent again. Then slowly, like a defeated soldier, Vanessa dropped the mic onto the floor with a loud clink. She turned and stumbled down the aisle, her once perfect dress dragging pathetically behind her. Phones captured every step. By the time she reached the door, the whispers had turned into laughter. And I knew, at that moment, Vanessa wasn't just walking out of my wedding. She was walking out of every soul circle, every reputation she had worked so hard to build. I stood taller, holding Daniel's hand, my heart racing with a strange mixture of relief and power, because Vanessa had tried to ruin me. But in the end, she had ruined herself. The wedding day dawned with a strange mix of emotions swirling inside me. Butterflies of excitement clashed with knots of anxiety. But above all else, I felt prepared. I had spent weeks orchestrating a quiet but powerful plan, and today, it would all unfold. The morning sun streamed through the curtains, painting the room in a golden glow. My makeup artist worked silently, brushing soft strokes of color onto my face, while my heart pounded with each passing second. My best friend, Zara, leaned against the dresser, sipping coffee. "You look stunning, Aisha, like jaw-droppingly gorgeous." "Nobody's going to look at anyone but you today." I gave her a small smile. "That's the plan, because today wasn't just about walking down the aisle. It was about finally putting an end to Layla's cruel games once and for all. As the ceremony began, I walked into the hall, my gown glimmering under the lights, and my heart racing in sync with the music. All eyes turned to me, and for a moment, I almost forgot the chaos Layla had tried to sow. Almost, but as I neared the stage, I saw her. Sitting smugly in the second row, her eyes scanning me like a predator sizing up prey. She wore a self-satisfied smirk like she still believed she had won. I took a deep breath, holding my bouquet a little tighter. She didn't know what was coming. The ceremony unfolded beautifully, every vow heavy with sincerity, every smile genuine. But when it came time for the reception, my plan slid into motion. The lights dimmed, the hall quieted, and the giant LED screen at the back flickered to life. A hush fell over the guests as an unexpected video began to play. At first, it looked like a generic slideshow of memories. Laughter, family moments, celebrations. But then the shift happened. Clips of Layla appeared. Not just her smiling face at gatherings, but her cruel words secretly recorded. The time she mocked me in front of strangers. The time she bragged about trying to sabotage my engagement. Even her messages to mutual friends, dripping with venom and jealousy, came flashing across the screen. The guests gasped, whispers filling the air like a storm building. Layla's smug smile vanished. I stood tall, my hand intertwined with my husband's, and said into the microphone, "Sometimes the people who claim to love us are the ones who want to see us fall. But today, I choose truth. I choose peace. And I choose to never let cruelty hide in shadows again." Lila's face drained of color. She stood up, stammering, It's all lies. She's making this up." But the damage was done. The evidence was undeniable. The whispers turned to judgment, and the judgment turned to glares. For once, Layla was exposed not as the perfect woman she pretended to be, but as the bitter, scheming saboteur she really was. And that was just the beginning. The reception hall buzzed with chaos. Guests who once admired Layla now looked at her with disgust. The whispers grew louder, circling her like vultures. She tried to ruin her own cousin's wedding. Someone muttered, "Shameful," another guest hissed. Layla's composure cracked. Her hands trembled. Her eyes darted wildly as if searching for an escape. She tried to shout over the noise. "None of this is true. She's framing me." But her voice quivered, betraying her desperation. Meanwhile, I remained calm. My husband squeezed my hand, whispering, "You've handled this with grace. I'm proud of you." Those words were worth more than anything. Then, like fate itself wanted justice, one of Lila's so-called friends stepped forward. "Actually, it's true," she admitted nervously. "I've heard Layla say those exact words." She bragged about trying to ruin everything. The crowd erupted. Gasps, shaking heads, and even outright condemnation filled the room. Layla looked around, her once loyal circle crumbling before her eyes. Her mask was shattered in a last desperate attempt. She lunged toward me, tears streaming. "Please, Aisha, don't do this. You don't understand. I was jealous. I was angry. But I never meant." I stepped back, my expression cold but calm. "You never meant? You tried to destroy the happiest day of my life. You lied, manipulated, and laughed at my pain. Tell me, Layla, what part of that wasn't meant?" Silence followed, heavy and suffocating. She dropped to her knees, sobbing while the guests turned away, embarrassed to even watch her unravel. Her reputation, once untouchable, was in ruins. The hall slowly shifted back to celebration. But this time, it was different. The air felt lighter, cleaner, like a storm had finally passed. People congratulated me, not just on the marriage, but on the courage to stand up for myself. And as the night wore on, I realized something important. I hadn't just ruined Layla's reputation. I had reclaimed my own dignity, because revenge wasn't about destroying her. That was about freeing myself. Still, deep inside, I knew this wasn't the end of her story. People like Layla didn't disappear quietly. And as I looked across the room, I caught her glare through her tears, filled with something darker than regret. It wasn't over. Not yet. The wedding ended beautifully, but my heart carried a weight I couldn't shake. Everyone danced, laughed, and celebrated late into the night. My husband and I shared our first dance, lost in each other's eyes, while the world around us faded into a blur of music and joy. But beneath the golden lights and laughter, my gaze kept flickering toward the empty seat where Layla once sat. She had vanished, not with an apology, not with grace, but with fury simmering in her eyes. And that look haunted me as the days passed. My life should have been perfect. A new home, a loving husband, and a fresh start. Yet everywhere I went, I felt her shadow. Anonymous numbers calling and hanging up. Strange comments under my social media posts. Snide remarks written with venom. Hidden behind fake accounts. At first, I brushed it off. But one evening, as I opened my inbox, I froze. There it was, a message from Layla. "You think you've won, don't you? But you've only made me stronger. If I go down, I'll make sure you burn with me." My blood ran cold. I locked my phone, staring into the darkness of my room. This wasn't over. Layla wasn't going to let go. My husband noticed my unease. "What's wrong?" he asked softly, his hand brushing mine. I hesitated, then whispered, "Layla." His jaw tightened. "Ignore her. She's desperate." But deep down, I knew better. Layla wasn't the kind of person who faded away quietly. She thrived on chaos. And sure enough, chaos came. Rumors began to spread at my workplace. Someone accused me of lying on my resume, of faking achievements. Anonymous emails went out to relatives, claiming I had trapped my husband in marriage with lies. I knew exactly who was behind it. One evening, while leaving the office, I found a small envelope tucked under my windshield wiper. Inside was a single photo me on my wedding day, smiling in my gown. Across the image in red ink were the words, "You will regret this." My hands shook as I clutched the photo, my heart pounding. Layla wasn't just trying to ruin my reputation anymore. She wanted to break me. And for the first time, I felt fear. But fear can be transformed into fire. The breaking point came 2 weeks later. I was walking into a family gathering when I overheard whispers. My aunt, shaking her head, muttered to another guest, "I can't believe what Layla said about Aisha. If it's true, that poor man married a fraud." That was it. Enough was enough. I realized then that waiting for Layla to stop was pointless. She wouldn't stop. Not until she destroyed me completely. So I decided to fight back one final time. I gathered every piece of evidence. The video clips from the wedding, the threatening messages, the fake accounts traced back to her, even the photo with the red ink. Piece by piece, I built a case, not just for family judgment, but for legal justice. When the day came, I didn't confront her in private. No, this time, I chose a stage she couldn't control. At a large family dinner, where she arrived dressed in her usual glamour, pretending nothing had happened. I stood up. My hands trembled, but my voice was steady. "Before we eat, I need to say something." The room quieted. Dozens of eyes turned to me. Layla smirked, already bracing for some emotional plea she thought she could twist to her favor. But instead, I pulled out a folder. "Layla," I said calmly, "I warned you once, but you didn't stop. So tonight, everyone deserves to see the truth." I passed the folder around. Screenshots, messages, the threatening photo, everything. Gasps filled the air. My uncle stood up, furious. "Is this real?" "Yes," I replied firmly. "And I've already filed a legal complaint. Harassment, defamation, blackmail. The authorities have everything." Lila's face went pale. Her fork clattered to the table. You wouldn't dare." "I already did." I cut her off. "Because you tried to ruin me? But all you did was expose yourself." Silence hung heavy. And then, slowly, people began to stand not for her, but for me. Support, protection, justice. Lila's mask shattered completely. She stormed out, her heels clicking like gunshots, her reputation in ashes. For the first time, I felt the weight lift, not because I destroyed her, but because I chose myself. Because I stood my ground. My husband took my hand, his eyes filled with pride. "You ended it, Aisha, finally." And as I looked around the room at the supportive faces, at the family who now saw me for who I really was, I realized something. Lila's cruelty had tried to define me. But in the end, it only made me stronger, because karma always comes full circle. And hers had just arrived. The end.